She was spending Thanksgiving alone, until a stranger knocked on her door, and with a shared slice of pie, her quiet life would never be the same. But who is he really, and what secrets does he hide? Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. If you're tuned in and ready to dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So, let's get started. The golden leaves of Chicago crunched under Margarita's tired shoes as she trudged up the steps to her small apartment building. Thanksgiving had always been a quiet holiday for her. But this year, quiet felt like loneliness pressing down with unbearable weight. Bills stacked on the counter. Work had left her bones aching, and there was no one to share the day with. Not a friend, not a family, not a love. She unlocked her door and stepped inside, hoping the aroma of the small pumpkin pie she'd baked would be enough to keep her company. It wasn't. The quiet apartment echoed around her like a reminder. She was utterly alone. Setting the pie down on the counter, she sighed. Maybe it wasn't so bad. She could curl up with a blanket, watch old movies, eat her pie, and pretend it was just another evening. A Thanksgiving without company could still be bearable. And then came the knock. One, firm, deliberate. She froze. Who could be knocking on her door at this hour? It was almost 6 in the evening. Visitors didn't exist in her world. She approached cautiously, peeking through the peephole, and froze again. A tall man stood there, dressed in a dark overcoat and scarf, snow lightly dusting his shoulders. His eyes were kind but serious, scanning her door like he'd come to the wrong place. But he was committed to being there anyway. Can I help you? Margarita asked, voice trembling slightly. The man smiled, a quiet warmth that made her chest twist unexpectedly. I'm so sorry. I think I knocked the wrong door, but I smelled something amazing and figured I'd ask if it was okay to share. She blinked. Share? Thanksgiving? With me? He nodded. I know it's strange. I didn't expect anything, honestly, but I'm alone this year. And well, neither of us has to be, do we? Margarita stared at him, uncertainty and disbelief warping her thoughts. She wanted to slam the door, send him away, pretend she was okay with her solitude. But something about the way he looked, tired, human, not entitled, not flashy, made her hesitate. Come in, she said finally, her voice barely more than a whisper. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then smiled. That smile. It was disarming in a way that made her heart race without permission. The man introduced himself as Raphael. Something about the name felt foreign, powerful, and gentle all at once. I'm sorry to intrude, he said, shedding his coat and sitting gingerly at the kitchen table. I didn't expect anyone to answer, and I certainly didn't expect pie. Margarita chuckled softly, brushing her hair back nervously. It's just a pie, a small one, but you can share if you want. The simple gesture felt monumental, and as they shared the pie, talking about work, life, and small worries, Margarita realized something she hadn't expected. She could breathe. She could laugh. She could hope. Raphael didn't talk about wealth or power. He didn't boast. He spoke of loneliness, mistakes, small regrets, and for some reason that honesty struck her. Something about his openness made her feel less alone, less small. When dessert was over, the apartment felt warmer. The outside world, cold and snow-laden, seemed to fade behind the walls and the stranger's soft, steady presence. Margarita, who had given up on hope, found herself smiling without shame, laughing without self-consciousness. But just as she began to relax, her phone buzzed. It was a text from her friend, reminding her that she had promised to spend the evening in the ER, covering a shift for someone else. Margarita's stomach tightened. I should be working, she said nervously. Raphael nodded. I understand, but maybe we don't have to rush. Just for tonight. Just this one Thanksgiving, no rules, no schedules. Her heart lurched. The temptation, the warmth, the strange, sudden comfort of someone noticing her. It was terrifying, yes, but it was also something she had been craving without even realizing. She swallowed hard, hesitated, then smiled. "All right," she said softly. "Tonight. Just tonight." And in that moment, something shifted. A billionaire stranger, a lonely nurse, a small apartment, and a shared pie. Their worlds collided in a way neither of them expected. As the evening went on, Margarita noticed something odd about Raphael. Small hints, gestures, a level of refinement in his movements, the subtle glint of a ring on his hand. But she dismissed it. She didn't ask. She didn't want to. Yet, when he left at the end of the evening, he handed her a small envelope with a card inside. "If you ever need someone to knock on the wrong door, I'll be there." Margarita stared at it, heart racing. Who was this man? And what did he want with her? If you were Margarita, would you let a stranger into your life like this? Comment Bilo? The moment Raphael stepped across Margarita's doorway, something in the air softened, as though the universe itself paused to watch. The warm scent of roasted turkey thighs and cinnamon sweet potatoes floated through the small apartment, wrapping them both in a cozy cocoon. It wasn't a spectacular Thanksgiving meal by any means. There were no extravagant dishes, fancy plates, or sparkling decorations. Just a modest table, a flickering candle she lit every year to make the day feel less empty, and a woman who had long accepted solitude as part of her holiday ritual. Yet to Raphael, this was already better than anything money had ever bought him. "Your place feels peaceful," Raphael said, closing the door behind him with a gentle click. Margarita flushed. "It's tiny." "Maybe," he replied, "but warmth isn't measured in square feet." She blinked, caught off guard by the softness in his voice. Men didn't usually talk like that. Most of the men she had dated, long before life became too exhausting for romance, spoke in half-distracted tones, like they were always waiting for something better to come along. But Raphael? He looked at her like being here was exactly where he wanted to be. "Are you sure you don't want to try to find your friend's house?" she asked as she set down an extra plate for him. He shook his head. "If I'm honest, knocking on your door was probably the best mistake I've made all month." She laughed. A nervous, surprised sound. "Well, sit, before the food gets cold." They took their seats at the table, knees almost touching because of how small her dining area was. Raphael took a spoonful of her mashed potatoes, paused mid-chew, and stared at her like she had just reinvented food itself. "This," he said dramatically, "is absolutely better than what I had catered last year." "Catered?" She raised an eyebrow. "Most people cook for Thanksgiving." "Most people," he echoed with a sheepish smile, "don't have 2 work meetings on a holiday." Her fork froze. "You have meetings on Thanksgiving?" "Sometimes," he said with a shrug. "When your company's investors live all over the world, time zones don't care about cranberry sauce." A small detail, a revealing one. He wasn't just some business guy. He was someone high up, someone powerful enough that people waited for his availability, not the other way around. She didn't ask why he worked so much. That felt too personal for a stranger, at least for now. Instead, she asked, "Do you like what you do?" He took the longest pause she had ever seen someone take before answering a simple question. "It brings success," he said quietly. "But joy? Not really." That honesty made her chest ache a little. Happiness was something she understood the scarcity of. He noticed her quiet mood and quickly changed the subject. "So, you're a nurse?" "Yeah," she replied, rolling her shoulders slightly as though the weight of her entire week rested there. "Hospice care mostly." "That must be heavy." "It is. But it's also meaningful," she said softly. "You learn to treasure the small things. A smile, a good meal, a peaceful moment." Raphael studied her with an expression that looked almost admiring. "You give people comfort when they need it most. That's rare." "Nobody ever described my job like that," she murmured. "Well, nobody you've dated had good taste apparently." She burst out laughing. A sweet sound, a needed one, and the way Raphael smiled at her, like he was memorizing every second, made her heart flutter. They talked about life, childhood memories, traditions they once held, holidays they missed because of work. He told her about the nights he ate takeout alone in a penthouse that echoed with silence. She told him about the nights she worked double shifts only to come home too tired to eat. Two people from two worlds, two kinds of loneliness, and yet, they fit. After dinner, Raphael stood up. "Let me wash the dishes." "What? No," she protested. "You're the guest." "Exactly," he teased. "And I want to leave a good impression." He rolled up his sleeves with a dramatic flair, and she couldn't help but laugh again. For a man who looked like he stepped out of a luxury magazine, he handled her tiny sink awkwardly, splashing water everywhere but still determined to help. "You're terrible at this," she teased. "But enthusiastic," he countered. They dried the dishes together, shoulder to shoulder, moving in a quiet rhythm that felt strangely intimate for two people who had met less than 2 hours ago. When they sat back down, Raphael grew surprisingly serious. "Margarita," he said gently. "Today, this dinner, talking to you, it felt more real than anything I've done in months." She swallowed, her fingers twisting slightly. "I'm glad. I enjoyed today too." He leaned forward slightly. "Would you let me see you again? Maybe tomorrow?" Her heart skipped. She wanted to say yes immediately, but fear tugged at her ribs. Fear of being a convenience, a momentary escape, a holiday loneliness band-aid. So she asked carefully, "Why?" He didn't hesitate. "Because talking to you felt like breathing, and I didn't realize how long I'd been holding my breath." Her heart melted. Completely. I'd like that," she whispered. A soft smile touched his lips. Tender, grateful, hopeful. But just as he reached for her hand, Raphael's phone rang sharply. The sudden noise shattered the fragile moment. He flinched. Then his face changed. One glance at the name on the screen, and the warmth drained from his expression. He declined the call immediately. But Margarita noticed. Anyone would. "Is everything okay?" she asked. He hesitated. Long enough to be noticeable. "Yes," he finally said, though his voice lacked conviction. "But I have to go." She nodded slowly, heart tightening. "Will I see you tomorrow?" "You will," Raphael promised, stepping back. "But next time, I owe you an explanation." He left her standing at the doorway, watching him disappear down the hallway, her mind spinning with questions. Who called him? Why did it change him so fast? And what was he afraid to tell her? The name on Raphael's phone changed everything, and he isn't ready to tell her why. Yet, Margarita barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the way Raphael's expression had changed the moment the phone rang. How his smile had fallen, how his shoulders had tightened, how he whispered, "I owe you an explanation," before rushing out the door. She tried to tell herself not to overthink it. He was a stranger who happened to be charming, kind, unexpectedly vulnerable, and someone she already felt drawn to in a way she hadn't felt in years. She shouldn't care, but she did, more than she wanted to admit. The next morning, sunlight spilled through her curtains, brushing the small apartment with soft gold. Margarita forced herself out of bed and got ready for her shift. Pulling her hair into a bun, pinning her name tag in place, tying her navy scrubs. Hospice days were long, emotionally heavy, and unpredictable, but they kept her grounded, purposeful. Still, as she stepped onto the hospital floor, a tiny part of her kept hoping she'd see him somewhere, that he'd kept his promise. She didn't expect him to show up. Not really. But by noon, while she was checking a patient's vitals, her phone buzzed. Raphael. Her breath caught. She stepped out into the hallway before answering. "Hello." His voice came through warm and low, but with an edge of hesitation. "Good morning, Margarita. I didn't think you'd call." "I said I would," he said gently. "I meant it." Her chest softened. "Is everything okay? You seemed worried last night." Silence. Not long. Just long enough to stir her anxiety again. "I want to explain," Raphael said finally. "But not over the phone. Can I meet you after your shift?" She shouldn't agree. She really shouldn't. not without knowing who he truly was. But she found herself saying softly, "Yes, good." He exhaled. "Text me the time. I'll pick you up." He hung up before she could ask anything else, and the rest of the day moved in a blur. When her shift finally ended, she waited outside by the benches, hugging her jacket to her body as the evening wind brushed cold across her cheeks. Then the car pulled up. Not the big black SUV he arrived in yesterday. Not something fancy or intimidating. Instead, a simple gray sedan, clean but ordinary. Something that blended in. That alone told her something. He didn't want attention tonight. Raphael stepped out and walked toward her with a softness she hadn't seen before. His hair was slightly tousled by the wind, and he wore a navy sweater instead of a tailored suit. But what struck her most was the look in his eyes. A mixture of guilt, earnestness, and something deeper, something strangely fragile. "Margarita," he said, voice warm but cautious. "Hi." He opened the passenger door for her without another word, and she slipped inside. The car smelled faintly of cedar and something clean, like fresh laundry. When he got in, they sat quietly for a moment. Two hearts unsure of the next step, two breaths caught in the same uncertainty. Raphael finally spoke. "There's something you should know about me." She turned toward him gently. "Okay. I didn't lie to you," he said. "But I also didn't tell you the whole truth." She waited patiently, her hands folded carefully in her lap. He took a breath. "My life is very public. Or it can be, depending on the situation. And there are people who expect things from me. People who watch everything I do." The puzzle pieces clicked. "You're famous?" she whispered. His lips curved into something between amusement and discomfort. "Not exactly, but well known in certain circles. Business circles." He nodded. "And last night," he continued, "the person who called me was my business advisor. He thinks I should be somewhere I wasn't. He has opinions about, well, everything. And seeing you at my place wasn't part of his plan," she guessed softly. "It wasn't part of anyone's plan," he admitted. "Not even mine." A small pang hit her chest. Fear that maybe she had been nothing more than a Thanksgiving distraction. "Did I make things difficult for you?" she asked quietly. "No," he said instantly, his voice so firm it startled her. "No, Margarita. If anything, last night was the first time I felt like myself in a long time." Warmth spread through her, slow and hesitant. "But," he continued with a sigh, "people in my world don't handle surprises well. They want everything structured, predictable. When I don't follow that, they panic." "And you?" she asked gently. "What do you want?" He turned to look at her fully. "You," he said quietly. Her breath hitched. "I don't want a scheduled dinner, or a polished event, or a holiday photo op." His voice softened, thick with sincerity. "Yesterday I wanted to stay, to help you cook, to laugh more, to keep talking until the candle burned out. And when my phone rang, I knew answering it would drag me back into a life I don't enjoy. A life that doesn't feel like living." He exhaled, looking down at the steering wheel. "I didn't want the moment to end," he admitted. "Not like that." Her heart squeezed in the most unexpected way. She understood that feeling too well, wanting to hold on to a moment because reality always felt heavier than it should. "So," she whispered, "why did you leave?" "For the same reason I'm here now." He looked at her again, eyes steady, hopeful. "Because I don't want to start something with you the wrong way. You deserve honesty." Margarita's throat tightened. "You barely know me," she murmured. "That's the thing," Raphael said, leaning slightly toward her. "I feel like I do, and I want to know more." Her pulse fluttered. Fast, terrified, excited. He hesitated again. "There's one more thing." She braced herself. "The person who called last night," he said slowly, "also reminded me that there's a charity gala I'm supposed to attend tomorrow. Mandatory. Public. Cameras everywhere." "Oh, if I go alone," Raphael said, "the speculation will be irritating." And if you go with someone? She asked. He swallowed. That's what I came to ask you. Her eyes widened. Margarita, will you come with me? Air caught in her lungs. Her fingers trembled. Her heart lurched. An ordinary nurse. A billionaire with a public life. A connection that wasn't supposed to happen. Raphael, she whispered. I don't want you to feel pressured, he said softly. But yesterday meant something to me, and I'd like to see where this goes. Slowly, gently, with honesty. The sincerity in his eyes was overwhelming, bright, hopeful, terrified. She opened her mouth to answer, but suddenly, headlights flashed across the car window. A black SUV pulled up behind them. Raphael's entire expression changed again. Not fear, not guilt, something else. Recognition. Margarita, he murmured, voice low. I think we need to talk somewhere else. She turned, confused. And then the SUV door opened. Someone stepped out. Someone who clearly knew Raphael. Someone who wasn't supposed to find him here. Who followed Raphael? And why did they show up right when he asked her the most important question yet? The door of the black SUV swung open with slow, deliberate weight, like a scene that wasn't meant to happen in her quiet hospital parking lot. Margarita held her breath. A tall woman stepped out, elegant, polished, wearing a long camel coat over a crisp white blouse and tailored trousers. She looked like she'd walked straight out of a high-profile business magazine shoot. Her hair was smooth, her heels sharp, her expression unreadable. But her eyes locked onto Raphael with unmistakable familiarity. Raphael, she said, voice calm but cutting. You left the meeting. Again. Raphael closed his eyes for one brief moment. Long enough for Margarita to know that this was exactly the thing he'd been running from. When he opened them again, he looked exhausted, guarded, and strangely protective. Sylvia, he said carefully. The woman crossed her arms. You were supposed to fly back last night. People are already asking questions. Margarita's pulse kicked. This woman knew who he was. She knew his schedule. She knew where he was supposed to be. She knew enough to follow him here. Suddenly Margarita felt painfully, disastrously out of place. Still wearing her navy scrubs, her hospital badge clipped to her pocket, her hair slightly frizzy from a 12-hour shift. Yesterday she was making Thanksgiving dinner alone. Today she was sitting in a billionaire's car, being stared at by a woman who belonged in the world Raphael kept trying to escape. Sylvia's eyes shifted to Margarita then, assessing, calculating, polite but cold. And you must be... Sylvia paused, waiting for an introduction. Raphael didn't offer one. Instead, he said, This is Margarita, and we're in the middle of something. Margarita's heart fluttered. The way he said her name was warm, steady, protective in a way he probably didn't even realize. Sylvia raised an eyebrow, unimpressed, or perhaps surprised. I see, she said. Well, whatever you're in the middle of, Raphael, we need to talk. Raphael's jaw tightened. I told you, I'm taking 2 days. Just 2. And I told you, Sylvia said smoothly, that the board is nervous. After the quarter you've had, disappearing without context. I'm not disappearing, Raphael snapped, then immediately softened his voice. I'm taking a breath. That's all. Margarita had never seen this side of him. A man torn between expectation and desire, between duty and something more human, more fragile. Sylvia's attention slid back to Margarita again, her politeness sharpening slightly. Miss, she paused. I apologize if this is awkward. It's just that Raphael has obligations. Very large ones. Before Margarita could respond, Raphael's voice cut in. She doesn't need your apology, he said quietly, firmly. She's not the problem. Sylvia blinked, caught off guard for the first time. Oh, she said, her tone shifting to something cooler. So this is serious. That word hit Margarita like a pebble in her ribs. Serious? No, this wasn't serious. This was a Thanksgiving accident. This was a wrong door meeting. This was something delicate and new, something she was afraid to name. But Raphael didn't correct Sylvia. He didn't say it wasn't serious. He didn't say anything at all. He simply reached across the console and took Margarita's hand. Her breath hitched. His hand was warm, certain, and Sylvia saw it. A sharp exhale left the other woman's lips. Subtle but absolutely there. Well, Sylvia said, collecting herself, I see you've made your choice, but the gala is tomorrow night, and you will need to attend. Preferably with someone appropriate. Appropriate. Raphael's tone dropped. Sylvia didn't blink. Polished. Media ready. Board approved. Margarita felt the words like a soft slap. Not cruel, but cold and deeply true. She wasn't polished. She wasn't media ready. She certainly wasn't board approved. She was a hospice nurse who'd spent the last few weeks scraping together rent and praying her mother's medical bills wouldn't increase again. A billionaire's world was never meant to touch hers, except by accident. Raphael squeezed her hand. She is the person I want to go with, he said. The world froze for a moment. Margarita turned toward him, stunned. Raphael, I asked you already, he murmured, soft enough for only her to hear. This doesn't change that. Her throat tightened painfully. Sylvia breathed out slowly, as if restraining several opinions at once. It's your image, she said finally. Your career. Your future. She stepped back toward the SUV door. Just remember, choices have consequences. With that, she slid back into the vehicle. The door closed, and the SUV pulled away, leaving a trail of tension in the cold night air. Margarita let out a shaky breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Raphael turned to her, regret and apology in his eyes. I'm sorry about that. You don't need to apologize, she whispered, trying to steady her voice. That's your world. She's part of it. It's a world I don't want to be trapped in anymore, he said softly. And yet, Margarita murmured. It still follows you. He exhaled, shoulders falling. That's why I asked you to the gala, he said. I don't want to face it alone. Her heart twisted. Not out of pity, but something tenderer, deeper. Raphael, I don't know if I'm what you think I am, she whispered. I'm just. You're exactly what I think you are, he said quietly, intensely. Warm, real, honest, and the first person who's made my life feel normal in a long time. Margarita looked away, blinking hard. Raphael, that woman had a point. I'm not polished or glamorous. I don't belong in a crowd of billionaires. No, he said gently, but you belong with me. Silence fell. Soft, hopeful, terrifying. Her heart fluttered painfully, as if trying to fly and fold at the same time. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to try. She wanted more. But before she could answer, her phone vibrated. A message from her sister. Mommy's coughing again. Hard. Can you come home early tonight? It's getting worse. Margarita's stomach dropped. She froze. Raphael saw the change in her face instantly. What happened? He asked. Tears pricked her eyes. Her voice cracked. My mom. She's getting worse. Raphael's expression fell, softening with concern, warmth, and something that looked like fear of losing her entirely to her world again. Margarita, he whispered. Let me help. She shook her head, stepping back. I can't think about galas right now. And for the first time since they met, she walked away from him. Raphael didn't follow. He simply watched her go. His heart in his eyes, his future disappearing into the cold night. Her mother's health is failing. Raphael wants to stand beside her. But can she let him into a world she's spent years trying to hold together alone? Margarita didn't expect the house to feel this warm. Not from the heater, not from the lights, but from the presence of someone who, in less than a week, had managed to make her quiet life feel seen. Raphael stood in her small kitchen, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hair a little messy from steam rising off the boiling pot, and something about the sight made her heart tighten. Not painfully, but with an unfamiliar, hopeful ache. How do you chop onions this fast? She teased, watching him glide through the vegetables like he'd been doing it for years. He chuckled softly. You'd be surprised what a man learns when he's lived too many nights alone. There it was again, that quiet loneliness he carried like a shadow behind his smile. Margarita stirred the pot of seasoned broth. In your world, I imagined you had chefs, assistants, people who handle things like this. I do, he admitted. But that's the problem. When people do everything for you, life becomes less real. I miss doing simple things. Things that mean something. She slowed her stirring. Her chest warmed. Simple things like cooking with a stranger who opened her door by accident? She asked lightly. He shook his head. Margarita, you were never a stranger. She blinked. What does that mean? He gave a small smile but didn't explain. Instead, he shifted closer. Not in an intimate way, but as if drawn to her energy. Just two people standing side by side. The kitchen filled with the smell of garlic, sage, and something deeper neither of them wanted to name yet. Dinner turned out beautifully. Her small dining table, usually piled with work papers, now held a warm meal, candles she hadn't lit in months, and 2 plates instead of 1. When they sat, there was silence. Not awkward, but comforting, like the stillness between tides. You really cooked all this for yourself? He asked. She smiled shyly. I wasn't planning to. I was going to microwave frozen turkey and make myself pretend it tasted good. That sounds terrible. It really is. He laughed. Head tilted back, carefree. And the sound filled her house in a way she'd never heard before. Raphael's laughter was the kind you don't realize you've been missing until it's there. And what about you? She asked. Fancy meals with crystal plates? He shrugged. That's the ironic part. The more you have, the less it means when you're eating alone. She swallowed. She knew the feeling all too well. Halfway through dinner, the conversation turned softer. So why were you walking around the neighborhood today? She asked. He paused, fork mid-air. Because, he said slowly, I couldn't stand another Thanksgiving in that big house. Too many memories. Too much silence. A chill went through her. Not frightening, but heartbreaking. She didn't push for details. His eyes already said enough. Loss lived there. And you? He asked quietly. Why alone tonight? She suddenly felt small. I've been working nonstop. My bills, they don't leave room for holidays. His gaze softened. You carry too much on your own. She tried to laugh it off. That's adulthood, right? But Raphael looked at her like he already knew her weight. Even though they'd only just met. After dinner, they washed dishes together. She scrubbed, he rinsed, both working in quiet sync. Felt strangely natural. At one point, he turned to her, water dripping from his hands. You know, this is the most peaceful holiday I've had in years. Really? He nodded. You made it peaceful. Her breath caught. She wasn't used to being told she made someone's life better. Most days she felt like she was just trying not to fall apart. Instead of responding, she reached for a towel and handed it to him. But their fingers brushed. A small, accidental touch. Yet, something shifted. Gentle. Warm. Quietly electric. Her eyes met his and suddenly the room felt smaller. Margarita, he began softly. But before he could finish, a loud buzz broke the moment. His phone. He stepped back, jaw tightening as he glanced at the screen. Is everything okay? She asked. He hesitated but then answered honestly. It's my brother. She raised an eyebrow. You didn't mention you had one. There's a lot I haven't said, he murmured. He declined the call, but the phone buzzed again, and again. Finally, he silenced it and put it face down. I'm sorry, he whispered. Tonight, I didn't want anything to interrupt. Her heart warmed, but also worried. Raphael, you should answer if it's important. He shook his head. Nothing is more important than being here. That sentence made her stomach flip, but also scared her in a way she didn't understand. Raphael, she said gently, I'm glad you're here, but I don't want to be the reason you ignore your family. He looked up. I haven't had a real family moment in years. And this feels like something I didn't even know I was missing. The way he said it, quiet, vulnerable. made her chest tighten. She'd spent so long being strong. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be chosen, even if just for an evening. Later, when Raphael reached for his coat, Margarita felt a sting of disappointment she hid behind a smile. "So," she said, "will you be okay getting home?" He paused, hand resting on the doorknob. "Margarita, would it be strange if I said I don't want to leave yet?" Her heart skipped. I mean, you're welcome to stay a little longer," she whispered. He stepped away from the door, but just as he did, bang, 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 someone knocked. Hard. "Urgent." Raphael froze. Margarita's eyes widened. "Are you expecting someone?" "No," he whispered, tension creeping into his voice. "But I think I know who it is." Her heartbeat quickened. "Who?" He swallowed, hesitating. "My brother." Margarita blinked. Why would he be here? How would he even find your location?" Raphael exhaled slowly, like a truth he'd been avoiding finally caught up to him. "Because I'm not just Raphael," he said softly. "I'm someone your world might recognize." Her breath hitched. His eyes were full of a truth she wasn't ready for. "Raphael, who are you?" He opened his mouth, but the door handle turned from the outside. "What do you think Raphael is hiding? Why would his brother track him down on Thanksgiving night? Comment your theories below." The knocking grew louder, sharp, commanding, almost echoing through Margarita's small living room. It felt out of place in a home where the loudest sound just minutes ago had been laughter over mashed potatoes. Raphael stiffened beside her. For the first time since she met him, he looked unsettled. "Raphael?" she whispered, voice barely steady. "Are you sure this is your brother?" He swallowed. "Yes. And if he's here, it means he's been looking for me all day." Margarita's heart clenched. "Why? What does that even mean?" Another knock, this one slower, heavier. "Open up, Rafa." A deep voice called from the other side. "We need to talk." Rafa. A nickname. Personal. Too familiar. Raphael closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing himself for impact. "Margarita," he murmured. "I'm sorry. I should have told you more. But I didn't want tonight to be about all of that." "All of what?" she asked, voice trembling. Before he could answer, the door handle shook again. Margarita exhaled shakily. "Let's just open it. Whoever he is, he sounds determined." Raphael nodded reluctantly, but he stepped in front of her, as if shielding her from something. When he finally opened the door, a tall man with storm-gray eyes and the same dark hair as Raphael stepped in. He wasn't angry, but he wore the look of someone exhausted from worry. "There you are," the man breathed. "Do you have any idea what it's been like looking for you?" Raphael clenched his jaw. "I told you, I needed space." "Rafa," the man said firmly, "you disappeared. On Thanksgiving. Without telling security. Without telling the family. Without telling me." He glanced around the small entryway, taking in the warm lights, the scent of cooked food, and finally Margarita. "And who?" the man said slowly. "Is she?" Raphael hesitated, then stepped aside so Margarita was fully in view. "Margarita," he said quietly. "This is my brother, Adrian." Adrian offered her a polite nod, reserved, formal, with an undercurrent of concern she couldn't quite read. Margarita smiled nervously. Hi. Sorry for the unexpected dinner guest situation." But Adrian didn't smile back. He looked at Raphael instead. "You shouldn't be here." Raphael crossed his arms. "I'm a grown man, Adrian." "Yes," Adrian said sharply. "A grown man with responsibilities, with an empire to run, with shareholders calling the house all evening, with mom refusing to eat because she thinks something happened to you." Margarita blinked. Shareholders? Empire? Security? She slowly turned toward Raphael. "Raphael," she whispered. "What exactly do you do?" Silence fell. A thick, heavy silence that seemed to swallow the air. Raphael finally exhaled. "I didn't want you to see me the way everyone else does." "But who are you?" she asked, voice trembling. He looked at her, really looked, and something in his eyes softened with guilt. My full name is Rafael Alejandro Cortez, he said quietly, CEO of Cortez Global Holdings. Her heart stopped. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. One of the biggest private corporations on the East Coast. Billions in assets. High-profile family. The kind of people who showed up in magazines she never bought but always saw at the hospital waiting rooms. You're that Rafael? She breathed. He nodded. She stepped back, needing space, needing air. But you walked into my house like a regular guy. No suits. No drivers. No entourage. That's because I wanted to be a regular guy, even if just for a night, he said. I wanted to feel normal again. Adrian sighed, rubbing his temples. Rafa, you can't keep doing this. Disappearing to pretend life is simple when it isn't. Rafael shot back. Not everything has to be about business. But it is your life, Adrian countered. Whether you like it or not. The air thickened. Two brothers standing in the middle of her tiny living room, carrying a world she had no idea existed. Margarita's throat tightened. Rafael, why didn't you tell me? She whispered. His face fell at the sadness in her voice. Because for the first time in a long time, he said softly, someone saw me. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the family legacy. Just me. And I wasn't ready to lose that. Her chest ached. Adrian glanced between them, sensing the emotional weight. His posture loosened a little. I'm not here to cause trouble, Adrian said more gently. But Rafa, the board needs to hear from you, and I need to know you're okay. Mom needs to know you're okay. Margarita bit her lip. She suddenly felt like she was the reason for a family crisis she didn't understand. You should go talk to them, she said quietly. Rafael spun toward her. No, I'm not leaving you like this. You're not leaving because of me, she corrected, voice steady but hurting. You're leaving because you have a life I didn't know about. A life bigger than this living room. Rafael stepped closer. Margarita, but she shook her head. I'm not angry, she whispered. Just overwhelmed. His shoulders sagged. Adrian cleared his throat softly. We can give you a minute. I'll wait outside. He stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind him. Now it was just the two of them. Rafael reached for her hand slowly, carefully, like something precious. I'm still the same man who knocked on your door by mistake, he murmured. The same man who laughed in your kitchen. The same man who felt at peace beside you. Her eyes burned with tears. She fought back. I know, she said softly. But now I understand why your world found you so quickly. Margarita, I don't want tonight to end like this. I don't either, she whispered. But it feels like the universe is telling us. This moment is bigger than just the two of us. He looked heartbroken. Will you let me come back? He asked quietly. She hesitated just for a breath, then nodded. Yes, but not tonight. Go handle your family. They're worried, and you're important to them. He closed his eyes, as if her understanding hurt and relieved him at the same time. I'll come back, he whispered. I know, she said. He stepped toward the door, hand lingering on the knob. But before leaving, he turned back. Today wasn't an accident, he said. I hope you know that. Her breath caught. Then he was gone. The door closed softly behind him, but the silence he left felt louder than the knocking that started it all. Margarita sank onto the couch, staring at the empty space where he'd stood. And then, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Thank you for taking care of my son tonight. I hope he didn't trouble you. Her heart stopped. His mother? How did she get Margarita's number? Who do you think sent the message, really? And what will Margarita do now that the billionaire's family has reached out to her? Comment your thoughts below. The kitchen glowed with warm golden light, the scent of roasted herbs and sweet potatoes drifting through the air. Outside, the late autumn wind brushed against the windows like a soft whisper. But inside Margarita's small living room, it felt as if time had slowed down. Rafael had taken off his coat and rolled up his sleeves. Simple gestures, nothing dramatic, but the effect was unmistakable. Without luxury shields, without a personal assistant hovering nearby, without $1,000 jacket reminding the world of who he was. He looked startlingly human, and startlingly tired. Margarita watched him stir the pot on the stove with surprising gentleness. She tried to distract herself by setting the table, but her eyes kept drifting to him. How he concentrated as if the soup were the most important task on earth. "You're doing it wrong," she teased softly, finally breaking the quiet. He looked up, pretending to be offended. "Doing what wrong? I'm cooking with elegance and intention." "That's charred elegance," she said, raising a brow. He laughed, and it wasn't the polished corporate laugh she had heard in his press interviews online. No, this one was unguarded, real, like something heavy inside him finally cracked just enough for light to slip out. He leaned against the counter. "Cooking isn't really my thing." "I guessed," she said. "You don't say," he replied playfully, looking at the slightly burned wooden spoon. She laughed, genuinely, freely, in a way she hadn't in months. She forgot about her bills, her double shifts, the ache of loneliness that clung to her skin like a heavy coat. For just one moment, the world shrank to two people in a small apartment kitchen, pretending not to look too long at each other. Margarita placed a hand on her stomach, steadying herself. She wasn't used to this, whatever this was. She didn't want to interpret it too quickly. "You know," Raphael said suddenly, watching her with that unreadable expression again, "I can't remember the last time someone made fun of me." "Then you need more people in your life," she replied. "Maybe I do," he said quietly. Something in his tone made the air shift, but before she could explore it, the timer beeped. "Turkey's ready," Margarita announced. "Should I be afraid?" he deadpanned. "Depends on your attitude," she said, smirking. He shook his head, smiling as he helped her pull the golden brown turkey from the oven. It wasn't perfect, slightly uneven, a little crispy at the edges, but the pride in her face was unmistakable. Raphael watched her for a long moment, admiration flickering behind his eyes. "This is the first home-cooked meal I've had in years," he admitted. She paused, frowning. "You don't cook for yourself?" He shook his head. "Too busy. And when you eat alone, everything tastes dull." Margarita hesitated. "I eat alone all the time. Does it get easier?" he asked softly. "No," she whispered. Their eyes locked, and for the first time all evening, the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was charged with something neither of them wanted to name too quickly. They sat at the small wooden table. One Raphael had to fold his long legs under, and began eating. The first few bites were quiet, gentle. Then Raphael paused mid-chew. "Margarita," he said slowly, "this is incredible." She flushed slightly. "You're exaggerating. It's just a turkey." "No, this tastes like warmth." He swallowed. "Like something I didn't know I missed." Margarita's heart tightened. He wasn't complimenting the food anymore. Not really. They ate in a soft rhythm. She told him about being a nurse, her favorite patients, the ones who had changed her view on life. He told her about growing up in a house full of staff but not family. How Thanksgiving for him had always been a formality. Meals eaten around board meetings, schedules, and announcements. "No one ever cooked for me," he said quietly. "Not like this." She blinked, surprised. "Never." He shook his head slowly. "Wealth gives you everything except the things you can't buy, moments like this." Margarita swallowed hard. He wasn't looking at the food. He was looking at her. She straightened, fighting back the unexpected warmth creeping into her chest. This was temporary. He was temporary. A one-night accident. A wrong-door meeting. He would leave tomorrow. She needed to remember that. But then Raphael's voice softened. "Margarita, can I ask you something?" Her heart stuttered. "Sure." He hesitated, grip tightening subtly around his glass. "Why were you spending Thanksgiving alone?" Her breath caught. Of all the questions she expected, not that one. She forced a small smile. "I had plans, but they fell apart." "That's not what I meant," he said gently. You seem like someone who deserves a table full of people. Laughter. Warmth. She looked down at her plate. I used to. But life changed. What changed? He asked softly. She opened her mouth and closed it again. This was too much. Too soon. Too raw. Nothing important, she lied. Raphael's brow furrowed. Margarita. But before he could finish, her phone buzzed on the table. She froze. It was him. The person she never expected to hear from. Not today. Not ever. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. Raphael watched her anxiously. Everything okay? Her throat tightened. No, she whispered. It's my past. And it just found me. The phone vibrated again. And again. The screen flashed with a name she hadn't seen in 2 years. Daniel. The man she once loved. The man who walked away. The man who left her to struggle alone. Raphael noticed the shift in her breathing. Margarita? Who is that? She lifted her eyes to his, haunted. My ex, she said softly. And he wants to talk. Margarita's hand shook as the phone buzzed relentlessly. Daniel's name glowing like a warning sign. Raphael's expression darkened. Not possessively, but protectively. Like someone who suddenly sensed danger from a past he knew nothing about. Margarita, Raphael whispered. Do you want to answer it? Her heart pounded. Should she pick up the call that once shattered her life? Or ignore it? And let Raphael stay in the quiet space they'd built together? If you were Margarita, would you answer your ex's call? Or let it ring and focus on Raphael instead? Comment below and tell me your choice. The phone kept vibrating on the table, rattling against Margarita's plate, each buzz echoing through the tiny apartment like a pulse she couldn't ignore. For a moment, she couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Daniel's name glowed bright on the screen, lighting up Raphael's face where he sat across from her. His expression wasn't jealous, not angry, just quietly alert, concerned, as if he could sense that this wasn't a simple call from the past, but something heavier, something sharp. Margarita, he said softly, you don't have to answer it. I know, she whispered, though her voice trembled. But what if it's important? He tilted his head slightly. Is he someone who ever called for good reasons? She swallowed. No. Daniel never called to apologize. Never called to check in. Never called to ask if she had survived the storm he left her in. So why now? The phone buzzed again, vibrating with urgency. Margarita pressed her palm to her chest, steadying her breath. Raphael leaned forward, elbows on the table, watching her with quiet patience. You don't have to decide right now, he said gently. I do, she murmured, because this isn't how I imagined tonight going. She lifted the phone with shaky hands. She didn't press answer, just looked at the name, as if it alone could unravel her entire heart. Raphael spoke softly. Margarita, you owe him nothing. Her eyes stung. He didn't know the full story, but somehow he understood the wounds she didn't speak of. You're right, she whispered. And finally, the call ended. The screen went dark. Silence filled the room, thick but strangely relieving. Raphael exhaled, almost imperceptibly. Good. Margarita set the phone down, her fingers trembling. He watched her carefully, waiting, letting the quiet settle without pushing her. Do you want to talk about it? He asked. She shook her head. Not yet. That's okay, he murmured. When you're ready. The sincerity in his voice hit her like warmth after a long winter. She had no idea what to do with it, no idea how to receive kindness that didn't come with strings attached. She blinked hard, forcing her voice to steady. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ruin dinner. You didn't ruin anything, he said. I'm just concerned. For me? She asked slowly. He nodded once. Very. Her breath caught. Why did that one word feel like sunlight? She looked away, embarrassed by the heat rising in her face. She wasn't used to being cared for. Not like this. Not gently, not deliberately. Not by someone who looked at her as if she was worth listening to. She pushed her plate aside, trying to calm herself. I don't want my past to interfere with today. I was actually having a nice time. The corner of Raphael's mouth lifted. Me too. And I don't want to drag you into my mess, she added quickly. Maybe I don't mind, he said softly. She froze. He held her gaze, eyes steady, warm, unhurried. The room suddenly felt smaller, quieter, as if the world had shrunk to the space between them. Why? She whispered. A long moment passed before he answered. Because tonight was the first time in a long time I didn't feel alone. Her breath hitched. He looked away, just briefly, collecting himself. The truth is, my life has been loud for years. Boards, meetings, expectations. Everyone wants something. Everyone pretends. And I play my part, until I forget what silence feels like. His eyes drifted back to her, softer now. But tonight, this home-cooked meal, this tiny apartment, you teasing me, you laughing, it felt like something I've been missing without knowing I was missing it. Margarita's throat tightened painfully. I didn't do anything special, she whispered. You did, he said. You let me be human. She swallowed, struck by the simplicity and weight of it. He leaned forward slightly, voice lower. Margarita, when I knocked on your door, I was running from an empty house. From a dinner table set for one. From a silence I've lived with too long. She looked at him, heart aching. You answered, he continued. And everything changed. Something inside her softened, dangerously, beautifully. But then, her phone buzzed again. Both their heads snapped toward it. A text message. From Daniel. Raphael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he stayed quiet. Margarita's chest constricted as she read the screen. Margarita, I'm in town. I need to see you. It's important. Her heart plummeted. No, she whispered. Not now. Not today. Raphael watched her face fall. What does he want? I don't know, she said shakily. But Daniel never shows up without taking something with him. Raphael nodded slowly, absorbing that. A soft seriousness settled over him. Not possessive, not jealous, just deeply protective. Margarita, he said quietly, you don't have to face him alone. She looked up sharply. Raphael held her gaze. I'm here, he said simply. Her breath caught again, harder this time. You don't even know me, she whispered. He stood from his chair, moving with a gentleness that felt like a promise rather than a gesture. I'd like to, he said. The world tilted. The kitchen blurred. The air felt charged again, thicker, warmer. Unsaid words hovering between them. But then, a knock thundered against her front door. Margarita froze. The sound echoed through the apartment, sharp and unmistakable. Raphael straightened, posture alert. Another knock, louder. Margarita, he whispered. Is that? Her blood ran cold. It can't be, she breathed. He wouldn't. But the knocking came again. Slow, deliberate, too familiar. She covered her mouth with her shaking hand. No, she whispered. Oh no. Raphael moved beside her instantly. Stay behind me. Raphael, you don't understand, she whispered, panic rising. He doesn't like boundaries. He never did. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then, a voice through the door. Margarita, open up. We need to talk. Her heart nearly shattered. It was him, Daniel. Her past was standing on her doorstep. And Raphael was standing between them. Raphael turned toward the door slowly, shoulders tensing, while Margarita stood frozen behind him, torn by fear, confusion, and the fragile hope that had been growing all night. One man represented everything she had survived. The other represented everything she could become. And both were standing on opposite sides of her tiny apartment. If you were Margarita, would you open the door and face Daniel, or stay behind Raphael and refuse to let the past in? Comment your choice below. The apartment was silent, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft, almost imperceptible breathing of Raphael behind her. Margarita's heart thudded so loudly she feared he could hear it. The door loomed in front of her, heavy and final. Behind it was the past. Behind her, Raphael. The unexpected gift she never thought she'd allow herself to feel. She swallowed hard. Raphael? He didn't speak, just let her words hang in the air. His hand hovered near hers, close enough for warmth, close enough to offer comfort without pressing her. The voice on the other side of the door came again, smoother now, calmer, but still carrying the weight of entitlement and history. Margarita, it's me. Please, just a few minutes. I need to explain. Her stomach twisted. She knew every word Daniel spoke would dredge up the pain she had buried. The nights she had cried quietly, wishing for someone to notice. The long days where she carried herself with a stiff back so no one would see how much she was falling apart. Her hands trembled as she turned to Raphael. I don't want to deal with him. Not tonight. Not ever again. Raphael's eyes softened. Not judging. Not angry. Just steady and kind. Then you won't have to, he said simply. You have a choice. Always. A strange calm settled over her. His words weren't commanding, weren't manipulative. They were free. They were exactly what she needed. Her gaze shifted to the door, and she made a decision. Slowly, she turned the lock and opened the door. Not for Daniel. Not for the past. She opened it for Raphael. The man who had shown up in her life unexpectedly, who had listened without judgment, who had quietly offered his hand and his presence without demanding more than her willingness to accept it. Raphael smiled softly when the door swung open. The warm glow from the apartment lights caught his features, making his eyes sparkle in a way that made her chest tighten. Hi, he whispered, almost shyly, a subtle contrast to the confidence he carried everywhere else. Hi, she said back, her voice steadier than she expected. She realized she had been holding her breath for hours. He stepped closer, careful to respect her space, and offered his hand. Stay with me tonight, he said. Not because you owe me, not because you have to, but because you want to. She studied him. Every line of his face, the depth of his gaze, the quiet strength he carried. And for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt the dangerous thrill of hope. Slowly, she took his hand. And in that moment, the rest of the world faded. The pain of the past, the sting of loneliness, even the nagging fear of what could go wrong. They all became background noise to the feeling of warmth and belonging she hadn't allowed herself in so long. They spent the evening together, quietly, simply, cooking together in the tiny kitchen, laughing over burnt edges and spilled sugar, sharing stories over mugs of cocoa. Raphael listened, really listened, to the little details she never thought anyone would care about. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magical in the way movies promised. It was better, real, honest. Hours passed, the night outside deepening into a peaceful silence, and Margarita realized she hadn't checked her phone. The call from Daniel, the texts, the reminders, they no longer mattered. They were echoes of a life she had outgrown. She looked at Raphael, feeling a warmth she hadn't known she could trust. She began, then paused. I never thought anyone would just choose to be here with me. For me, he shook his head gently. I didn't choose to be here because of what you can give me. I chose to be here because of who you are. And I want to keep choosing it. Every day, if you let me. Her throat tightened. She wanted to laugh, cry, and whisper all at once. I think I'd like that, she whispered back. He smiled, just a little, as if that single sentence was all he needed. The hours stretched into the quiet magic of the night. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the city in white. Inside, they shared warmth, laughter, and simple companionship. The kind that grew into something stronger without effort, without rushing, without force. In that moment, Margarita realized something profound. Love didn't always arrive as fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes, love arrived quietly, with patience, with respect, and with the choice to stay, even when everything else told you to run. And as she finally leaned against him, safe and secure, she knew she had made the right choice. Not for wealth, not for convenience, but for the heart that had quietly waited to be seen. The night deepened. Outside, the world slept. Inside, Margarita and Raphael simply existed together, learning the rhythms of each other's presence, understanding that happiness wasn't an event. It was a choice, repeated with care. And for the first time in a long time, Margarita felt like her story wasn't about surviving alone. It was about living fully, loving fully, and letting someone see her for everything she was, even the parts she had thought broken. The first rays of morning light peeked through the curtains. Margarita stretched, feeling the warmth of Raphael's hand in hers. She knew life wasn't perfect. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, but for the first time she didn't feel afraid. Because she had chosen love, real love, the kind that money couldn't buy. And Raphael, he had chosen her back. If you were Margarita, would you take a chance on a love that started unexpectedly, from kindness and trust, rather than a perfect plan? Comment your choice below. Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.